Hello friends and welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing well and that life is treating you kindly. Today I have a story to share that's both eerie and fascinating. But before we dive into it, I want to thank you for all your support. Your likes, comments, and subscriptions mean the world to me. Please keep me and my family in your prayers, and may you all find peace and happiness in your lives. Let's get into today's story. It begins with the birth of my eldest son. I was in my 9th month of pregnancy, and it was my first child. My health was not great, and my mother suggested that I come stay with her for the delivery. Since my mother-in-law was quite old and unable to help, my husband agreed it was a good idea. So I moved in with my mother for the last stretch of my pregnancy. It was summer, and our house was adjacent to a large mosque. The mosque was quite big, with a few flats, and we lived in the upper portion. My family, my father, younger sister, younger brother, and mother were all there with me. We were all sleeping on the roof due to the heat. I have a habit of eating late at night, even when it's very hot. During this last month of my pregnancy, my hunger seemed insatiable. One night, around midnight, I felt particularly hungry and asked my father for the keys to the kitchen. I told him I would go down, eat something, and come back quickly. My father, worried about my health, insisted I should take my younger sister with me for safety. I woke her up, and she agreed to come after drinking some water. I reminded her not to look towards the graveyard adjacent to our kitchen window, as I had heard eerie stories about it. The graveyard was expansive, filled with old trees. Despite its large size, it wasn't haunted per se, but locals spoke of a woman who was said to come there after midnight, crying for her children. People claimed she was seen around midnight, wailing and searching for her children, and advised avoiding eye contact with her. As we descended the stairs, the wind picked up, which felt a bit unsettling. We reached the kitchen, and my sister drank her water. My father had prepared some food for me, so I started eating. The graveyard, visible through the kitchen window, looked ancient and eerie at that hour. As I began eating, we started hearing unsettling noises from the graveyard. There were voices calling out, "Shamim, look at me, listen to me," followed by a woman's loud crying. Her cries were desperate and heart-wrenching, saying, "My children are dead. I am crying. Someone has killed all 4 of my children. Why don't you look at me? Look this way. You're going to be a mother too. You can understand a mother's pain." Her cries became increasingly distressing, and my father began reciting Quranic verses upstairs, likely in an attempt to ward off the disturbing presence. My sister was extremely frightened and urged us to hurry back upstairs. I reassured her, telling her to stay quiet and focused so we could finish and return quickly. We wrapped up our tasks in the kitchen as efficiently as possible, trying not to look towards the graveyard. As we climbed the stairs, the woman's cries grew louder, as if she was right next to us. The noise was so intense it felt like the woman was physically with us, making the hairs on our arms stand up. Despite the terrifying experience, I recited Quranic verses and kept my gaze forward, reminding my sister to do the same. We finally reached the top, and the woman's cries abruptly ceased. My father asked if we had eaten and if we were scared. I said we were fine, and he mentioned he had heard the noises and had been reciting verses for our protection. He suggested that being in the mosque's vicinity might have provided us with some safeguard. So that was my story. If you enjoyed it, please share it with others. Now let's move on to another tale. This one is from Shaquille, a YouTuber who had a chilling experience involving an old graveyard. He decided to document the graveyard's history and eerie reputation in a vlog. Shaquille had invited his friends Ahmad and Abdullah to join him on a visit to the graveyard, which was reputed to be over 200 years old. They planned to film their visit and explore the graveyard's past. Despite warnings from locals about avoiding the graveyard after 2 p.m., the trio decided to proceed with their plan. When they arrived at the graveyard, it was already late and the area was deserted. The graveyard was located in a jungle, and the trio felt a sense of unease. Shaquille set up his mobile phone on a tripod to start filming. Just as he began recording, the camera malfunctioned, but after restarting the phone, they continued. They ventured deeper into the graveyard, encountering a particularly large and ancient grave. While investigating, they heard a child crying from the bushes. Terrified yet curious, they approached the sound, only to discover a child's skeleton lying there. The discovery was shocking, and fear overwhelmed them. In their panic, they scattered in different directions, unable to find each other. Shaquille ran towards where he thought his friends might be, but quickly realized they were too far apart to locate. He struggled to find his way back and felt increasingly disoriented. At one point, he saw a figure in white clothing smoking a cigarette, but when he approached, the figure vanished, leaving no trace behind. Frightened, Shakil continued running and tripped over something, ending up in front of the same large grave they had seen earlier. Desperate to find his friends, he tried calling Ahmad, who answered, but the connection was poor. Shakil's calls to Abdullah went unanswered. As the day turned into evening, he decided to leave the graveyard, finding Ahmad waiting by their bike. Ahmad explained that he had heard Abdullah calling out but couldn't find him, so he decided to return home alone. They informed their families about the situation, and a search party was organized to find Abdullah. Abdullah was eventually found unconscious in the graveyard, and when he regained consciousness, he described seeing the same figure Shakil had encountered. The shock of the experience left Abdullah deeply frightened and impacted his mental state significantly. The incident had a lasting effect on Abdullah, and he struggled with fear and anxiety for a long time. The encounter with the eerie figure and the intense experience in the graveyard left him traumatized. Moving on to a different story, I want to share an account from Muhammad Hamza, who has lived in Lahore for many years. His story involves his maternal uncle's niece, Asma, and a mysterious mansion near their home. In 2001, Muhammad's family moved to Lahore, close to his maternal aunt's house. Near their home was a large old mansion that had been abandoned for 2 years. The mansion was surrounded by high walls, making it eerie and intimidating, especially at night. Asma, a cheerful girl with striking eyes, frequently visited her uncle's house. One evening, she went out to buy something and had to pass by the mansion. She heard someone calling her name, but when she looked around, no one was in sight. Feeling unnerved but dismissing it, she continued on her way. Asma experienced another unsettling encounter when someone called her name again. She felt a heavy hand on her shoulder and fainted from fear. Neighbors found her and brought her back home, but the ordeal had a lasting impact on her. Following this incident, Asma began experiencing severe disturbances at night, including high fever and nightmares involving terrifying entities with red eyes and dark skin. Despite consulting local clerics and receiving spiritual healing, her condition did not improve immediately. After a period of improvement, Asma's condition worsened again. During a visit to the market, she was attacked by an unseen force that threw her to the ground with great force, causing serious injuries. The child was rushed to the hospital, where she lost a significant amount of blood and showed abnormal behavior. Her family continued seeking help from spiritual healers and scholars, who eventually discovered that Asma was possessed by jinns. The jinns, angered by the death of their child, targeted Asma, causing her severe distress. The exorcism performed by a knowledgeable scholar successfully drove away the jinns, but the damage had already been done. The trauma left Asma in a state where she could not recover fully. Her condition remained severe, with twisted limbs and an inability to speak, even years later. In 2011, during a funeral visit to the area, Muhammad Hamza saw Asma as a teenager, still affected by the supernatural events from her childhood. Her condition had not improved, and she remained in a state of distress, unable to lead a normal life. The story highlights the profound impact that supernatural events can have on individuals, leaving lasting effects on their mental and physical well-being. It serves as a reminder of the importance of seeking help and support when dealing with such distressing experiences. So, that was my story for today. I hope you found it intriguing and thought-provoking. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel for more stories.